We've discovered that in the distant past, humans and animals could communicate, change forms, and live together. And from these early connections, we acquire our clan animals, our crest animals, our animal lineage. So, where do we see these depicted? In a number of different places, but in particular in what we refer to as crest art. Crest art basically depicts your family tree, your ancestral past, including the relationships that your distant ancestors have had with animals, with birds, with fish, and also the stories of your superhuman ancestors. Or superhuman heroic ancestors who engaged in great feats of strength and in great heroic tales. For each of the encounters that takes place, you today have earned the right to portray that animal or tell those stories about your past, including your past ancestors who essentially work as superheroes. This is an earned right or privilege, and along with it comes all of the songs, all of the histories, and all of the dances that are associated with those historic tales. These are 3 examples. These are all crest hats. They are worn on the head during winter ceremonies, and that could include the potlatch. Just quickly, the one at the left is Raven barbecuing. You're going to see him a little bit later. He is a crest hat that has already been repatriated to the Tlingit. So he used to be at Penn. He is no longer living at Penn. The one in the middle is Beaver, and the one at the far right is Killer Whale. Killer Whale today is located in the Smithsonian. But what we're looking at is a 3-dimensional print-out replica of Killer Whale because the original has been repatriated, very much following the story of Raven. These are all images associated with crest art. Of all of the opportunities for crest art, I think the most well-known example would be in totem poles. So let's look at those. Let's start by breaking down the words totem pole. A totem itself is anything, an object, a creature, something that is believed to have spiritual significance and that we respect. It can be used as an emblem, and that's more or less the way the Northwest Coast is using a totem. It is something, it's symbolic, it's sacred. It's not worshipped itself, but it's a representation. What it represents is incredibly important, and it is treated with respect, with reverence, and with pride. For the Northwest Coast population, totems themselves function very much as family crests, and I think if we consider those as parallel to the family crests that would be used in European lineage, it will help us to understand what the Northwest Coast is also creating and using as part of their living history. So, okay, family crests reveal relationships and status, and that, of course, would be true for European family crests also. And they most famously appear on totem poles. An individual family may own more than one totem, crest, or emblem. And that is because their ancestors could have had multiple encounters with different creatures. These emblems, these crest images can also be obtained through marriage and sometimes through warfare as well. So it becomes actually kind of complex, and you can, as a family, own multiple crest images, and that's why our totem poles end up being filled, sometimes large scale, with a variety of different animals. There are multiple types of totem poles. Some of these types are overlapping, but there are distinct categories for totem poles. The first category, and probably for us the most important, is the crest totem pole. That may be a part of the house. We'll see one in a moment. It portrays a family's ancestry and the emblems that it has the right to display. So it is a piece of status. Explaining who you are and what your rights and privileges are within the community. And we'll see some samples of that. There's also the storytelling totem pole. And this is common as well. It depicts an historical event. It might be created to celebrate a wedding, to remember a history event that has happened. And as we'll see, there are also shame poles that have been created to make fun of people who don't pay their debts. Then there are various forms of mortuary poles. These are made to honor the dead. Sometimes these actually have the ashes of the deceased kept in a compartment on the back of the totem pole. And the totem pole itself may represent the activities, the accomplishments, and the status of the individual in society during his lifetime. To clarify crest poles a little bit more, they can be made from a single log of cedar, reaching up to 60 feet in height. And we do have old growth forest in the Northwest coast, very richly available to the inhabitants. They can be placed on the inside of the house, and they can actually support the roof beams. Or if you go over here lower left, you're going to see one of the totem poles, the crest poles, that's actually functioning as a doorway. And visitors to the home would actually walk right here through the center of the pole to enter the interior. But by doing that, they're going to be reminded of the family tree, the ancestral heritage of the people who own that house or property. Crest poles can be created also as memorial poles, and that would be to commemorate somebody who lived before, back in the day. This could be a carved history of one of your ancestors. It could be way in the distant past. It could also be your grandfather who recently passed away. Or we can have literally mortuary poles that can function as crest poles. These may or may not contain the ashes of the dead person, and they kind of overlap with memorial poles. And let's say it is your grandfather, but let's say he's achieved something really important in his lifetime. We want to put that on the pole too. So the mortuary pole becomes a memorial pole, and also at the same time is definitely a crest pole. So there are overlapping categories, and at the end of the day, I think the most important element in describing these poles is the family crest being displayed, allowing them to be categorized as crest poles. They can also be welcome poles, but at the end of the day, these welcome poles are also crest poles. They were placed along the water's edge, and we're looking at, over here on the lower right, a photograph from the 19th century that depicts this. They became increasingly large in scale in the 19th century. We do not, in fact, really know what the totem poles look like before European contact. With the increase in wealth through trade between Native Americans and Europeans, and I'm thinking in part fur trade, but other things as well, the Native Americans became richer and wanted to display their wealth because they're richer, so they're going to create totem poles that are bigger, grander, and more representative of their position in society. The Native Americans also acquire new tools, metal tools, through trade with Europeans, and it makes the carving of these poles much, much easier. In addition to that, beginning late 19th century, there was some tourist traffic along the waters of the Northwest coast, and certainly we have the invention of the photograph more or less beginning 1839. And by the time we hit the end of the 19th century, those tourists want to take pictures of the totem poles. So you want to give them something that is tourist attractive. So there are a number of reasons for these poles to grow in numbers and also to grow in size and complexity. This is the sample that we have in our textbook, figure 6.19. It is from Albert Bay, excuse me, and it was created in the 19th century. We have two separate photographs, one 1890 on the left and one 1900 in the upper right-hand corner. This will give you a little bit of a sense of how elaborate these totem poles can become. This would be a house pole that actually is attached to the house front. And our textbook author makes a big deal out of the way in which it is both three-dimensional and two-dimensional, and the two-dimensional form merges seamlessly with the three-dimensional form. The thing that makes it most stunning is on the lowest level right here, and this would open up and create a passageway for ritual events or ritual ceremonies. This is the beak of Raven, but that is also created out of a real canoe, a portion, let's say a half of a canoe. So we're talking about something pretty impressive in size that would capture the attention of anybody who is passing near this structure. Let's take a look at some of the images on the pole, and each and every one of the crest images would represent an encounter of this family, and it would also represent the right of the family to claim a connection with the mythic ancestral animal, beginning, and this is not too shabby, right up here at the top. This is a depiction of Thunderbird, and we know his importance throughout North America, but also particularly in the Northwest Coast. I am sorry I cannot see well enough to talk about the images that appear underneath. There's supposed to be a killer whale and also a wolf, but I'm going to have to skip them because I can't make them out. But I can come down here to this figure, and this would be one of those mythic ancestors from the past, referred to as the wise one, kind of clan figure. There's an indication that he's holding a copper. In your textbook, you'll see one of those, and a copper is a visible emblem of wealth. So we have a superhero ancestor who is displaying wealth and power, essentially, status. So this is a prestige depiction. This, with this great big long beak right here, is a mythic bird, and I have it in the text that he's associated with cracking human skulls, but I think he's not quite that scary. I do believe this is a mythic creature, a bird creature, who comes and appears during periods of initiation, taking the young, unmolded boys into the wilderness, but returning them after consuming their childishness, bringing them back as adults to the community. So a pretty nifty, important bird ancestor that we've made connection with. Underneath him, and this one is kind of seeable here. And let's go over here. Actually, you can see my grizzly bear a little bit better. He's located directly above the raven. This is his head. These are his hands. On the paws or hands of the grizzly bear, what you're going to see are images of humans, and what that references is the interconnection, the shape-shifting that once upon a time took place between the grizzly bear and human beings. So he's bear, but he's also human, and he changed back and forth between his bear form and his human form. And then, of course, we finish with Raven, this great mythic figure in the Northwest Coast with his beak projecting forward. That's the canoe. And then these amazing wings and the tail feathers behind Raven, which are spread out, making a pretty significant display of one's ancestral lineage. These are a few more 19th century photos, so you can get a look at these, particularly down in the lower left corner. Look at all those totem poles lining the shore. They would have been very attractive to people who were sailing by. I also included some images in the right side of my PowerPoint slide, and I simply want you to know that traditionally, the totem poles were allowed to decay, to pass away, and to be reclaimed by the earth. In order to create a totem pole, you had to go through a great ritual and ceremony. You would have done the same thing to restore one. So there was absolutely no point in doing restoration on a pole. So when it began to age, you simply let it fall to the earth and decompose. You would then go about carving a new one and engaging in the ritual ceremony of erecting that pole, which is one reason that we need to pay special attention to totem poles that are being preserved in museums.